from collector to creator using the code framework and Rome research. That's a mouthful. So I see a few people here who have done, I think, building a second brain. Some people who are members of Nest Labs. So I've basically smashed together the ideas of two, I would call them public intellectuals, Tiago Forte and Anne-Laure Lecamp. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. And they're like the ideas I'm going to explain are basically a distillation of a framework of an approach to go from collecting notes on one side to expressing yourself, creating content on the other side. And I believe that collecting notes, organizing them, distilling them, and expressing your own insights is a basic basic process of knowledge work. So it's not just about content creators. I believe that like all knowledge workers, all creative knowledge workers are creators in some sense, although maybe their creations are only shared within their teams. But if you write a really good memo or a really good guide how to do something, that is content. That is something you can create based on your notes. So if you have questions, let's see. Oh, first, today's workshop. So it's 60 minutes. We're going to talk. Mostly me, I'm going to talk, but I want you to interrupt me whenever you have questions or stuff that you think, hey, I've done building a second brain or the collected to create a course, and I see this a little bit differently. So first of all, we're going to look at what it means to gain perspective as a knowledge worker, why it's important to have a unique perspective. Then we'll dive into the code framework. So at the different steps, the collect, organize, distill, express phase, and then there's a recap and time for Q&A. I've reserved 10 minutes for Q&A, but I have a little bit more time if it's necessary. Then make yourself heard either in the chat. So use the chat freely. I have it open. I will not have a constant eye on it, but I will check every now and then. And then use the raise hand feature. So under reactions, if you have the Zoom screen open, there's reactions and you can raise your hand, and I will see that in the participant screen and I can ask you to unmute. So if you have anything to say, want to speak up. What else? Session is being recorded. The recording will be shared. So if you have to go in the meanwhile, don't you worry. The chat I will not share, so feel free to interact. Save the chat yourself. I'm not going to share it publicly because I've noticed that people often share useful stuff in the chat, but it's also a place for people to express themselves. And I want this to be like a safe space where everyone can feel free to express themselves without having to worry if their employer will see it someday. I've had people ask me, can you edit this? Can you edit the chat log? So I'm not going to share the chat. All right, so let's get started with perspective. And the way this is structured, it's like I have slides, but as I go through the code framework, I will show you how I do it. And the use case we're going to discuss is creating a newsletter. So you can use the code framework for basically any type of content, be it a video, a session like this. So basically, I use the code framework to come to these slides to refine my understanding of the code framework and to then, well, express it in this format. So I think this in itself is a demonstration of what it means to express yourself. So we'll focus now mostly on how do you get there? How do you get to an expression of your insights? And why is it important? So I've been a knowledge worker for over 10 years. I've been in corporate IT, quit my corporate job September of last year and really fully focused on Rome stack, content creation. And then I realized, oh, I've been doing the same thing over and over again, although now I'm creating content for, the internet, but before I was creating content for a smaller audience. So these ideas apply everywhere. And the reason why our perspective is needed is we live in a complex world. Like it's changing so quickly. Just look at the pandemic and how little information, how little knowledge there was at the beginning. And being a note taker and a note maker, I've really seen people step up their understanding of not just healthcare, but also other systems, like political systems. And I think as we share information, as we consume information as knowledge workers, like so many people are knowledge workers now, earning their living, thinking through problems and coming up with solutions. That's like the basic or the core of doing knowledge work. So we need to find solutions. And how do we find solutions? It's based on our experiences, our insights, our knowledge, but our brains are so limited. So within the note-taking world, there's this idea of a second brain, and your note-taking tool is basically your second brain. And as we take notes of our experiences, of the knowledge that we consume, the information we consume, we gain the insights necessary to solve problems. So when you gain knowledge of one domain, often as your understanding deepens, you learn to apply different principles to another domain. So in this case, for example, the code framework, it's very much aimed at writing, so using your notes to write. But now that I'm focusing more on video production, I've noticed, oh, I can apply this same process with some changes, maybe some more focus on collecting visuals than just text, but I can apply the same principles to other domains. So I think that's why it's so important to gain perspective, and note-taking is a crucial part of it. And I think it's often underestimated how important notes are. Looking at the people I see here, I think most people don't have a problem collecting notes, which is the first part of the code framework. So the code framework is comprised of basically 4 processes. So the collect process, where you collect your thoughts or your insights in your second brain, so your note-taking app. Organize is often where the struggle happens for many people. So it's not just being able to record your thoughts, it's also organizing them in a way that you can easily find them back. So storing your notes is not the problem, but organizing them so you can find them, that is often an issue. And then as we progress, we notice, well, this is getting more and more difficult to do. So collecting is like the lowest effort, making a highlight, scribbling down a note, but then what? So you go through organize, then distill, and distillation is basically a process where you go through your organized notes, review them, and build on top of that knowledge. So either connect them or boil down to the essence of what an idea means and how it applies. And then the final step is express. And that is basically often a writing process, but could also be like a recording process or a live workshop process, where you explain your ideas in a way that others, but also your future self. And I think that is often an overlooked person, our future selves, that we can understand it. So often organization and distillation are already processes to help your future self benefit from the work you're doing now. But I think when you express, and we'll see an example of how I do it, using tweets, for example, how I express my knowledge to feed my further thinking. So before we dive into the first process, the collect phase, I don't know if anyone has questions or comments, so just raise your hand. See, I see. Okay, no questions. Going to dive in then to the collect phase. And the like the key in this is knowing your sources. So I've written know thy sources, and no matter what the type of information is that you work with, or the type of knowledge that you try to retrieve, you will have your sources. Can be specific academic journals, for example, could be websites, could be YouTube channels, could be, in my case, Tiago Forte. I've done his course 3 times. I have my notes. I have access still to the community. And when it comes to doing knowledge work, which is basically my job now, to think about knowledge work and getting better at it, I know where to look for sources. And I have, and it's not just the places where I go, but also the formats that I consume. And that informs the tools that you use. So for example, if I consume most information by watching videos, I need a tool to collect my insights from those videos. So maybe I need like a little tool. I can record little snippets of videos I'm watching. So I take almost like a video highlight. If I'm just reading books, maybe a Kindle is enough, or an iPad, so I can highlight. So your sources inform your tools. And then during the collect phase, it's not just passive consumption. You're also creating. So when you highlight something, basically that is you creating a packet of information for later use. If you write down a note, again, that is something you create. And then the question is, once you create that during once you collect something, what is the further process? So I'm a systems thinker. I'm also always thinking of flows of information. So what are the inputs? What are the manipulations that happen on the data? And then what are the outputs? So it's not just enough to collect. And often I see a lot of focus on collecting, but then people not asking, okay, but then what? What happens? What is the flow of information after I collect something? And I see a question. Let's see. Ethan, any comments on how code relates to Zettelkasten? And I will get to that. So good question. It's I would say one of the tools you can use to distill. What else? Unless I'm a node hoarder. Many people are. So the question then becomes what to collect. And the first 3 I copied from Anne-Laure from her course. So anything that's reusable. So you have to ask yourself, is it useful and worth revisiting? So an idea, a list, a framework, like steps, and we'll see later what it means. Is it relevant? So is it personal? Is it pertinent? Is it recurrent? So do you encounter the same idea over and over again? Probably worth taking a note to deepen your understanding of that idea. And then the last one I added myself based on what I learned through experience, but also building a second brain. So does it resonate with me? So even if like it's not immediately reusable, relevant, or recurrent, does it do something with you? And probably for most people, this is the filter they use. It resonates with them. So and that's why many people hoard their notes. I'm not saying it's bad. You just need a system to then further further filter out all the noise. So that's what the code framework is for. This is an image from Collected to Create a course. So examples of the different categories. Like when something is reusable, could be practical tools like templates or frameworks, just quotes that are inspiring or that you want to reuse later. Like I think somewhere in this presentation, I have creativity is just connecting things. It was a quote by Steve Jobs, and I find myself returning to that idea over and over again. Then relevance, so personal insights, inspiration, so flashes of inspiration, very specific knowledge or experiences that you had. And then is it recurrent? like trends, popular ideas. Personally, I'm more like, if something is recurrent, do I really need to store it? Like, for example, just one example is Atomic Habits. I've read the book, I haven't taken notes, but I see those concepts so many times on the internet that I don't bother taking notes now at this point. And then this is what Tiago says, what to capture, things that are inspiring, useful, again, personal or surprising. And for me, surprising is really important because it's so easy to step into confirmation bias. It's so easy to look for the things that confirm what you already believe. And for a long time, that's how I took notes. Like, I was like, oh, see, this proves my point. Now I'm more looking toward, well, I believe this, but this writer with this evidence or this support says this. And often that is what I dig into when I'm doing when I'm writing fleeting notes for my Zettelkasten. I can share that in a bit. And then how do you actually collect into Rome? Very simple, three ways. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because on itself this could be a session. The daily notes page, for me, that is the most important entry point. Just use the daily notes page and you don't need any other tool if you are near a computer most of the time. So if you're a knowledge worker, probably you're working on a computer, have Rome open, preferably on another screen, and you're set. Combine it with templates and you're like, it doesn't get any frictionless than that. Alternatively, if you want to move away from your computer, use Readwise. And Readwise is mostly useful for anything text related. So articles, books, but also podcasts with Air, in combination with Air. Let's see. We're going to dive into organize, and then I want to show how I do these 2 steps in one. So it looks like, oh, it's a process. Well, I've distilled this to one process when it comes to writing the weekly newsletter. To organize, the principles I keep in mind, automate as much as possible. If I cannot automate it, I use templates. And why do I use templates? Because then I can leverage queries and use them as inboxes. And I'll show in a bit how I do this. Then in Rome, how do you actually do it? So again, templates, but how, and queries, but how do you actually power those? Well, using metadata, so links. Links to pages, to blogs in Rome Research, and something that you cannot use in queries, but it's very powerful, are the unlinked references, or just typing double parentheses and then a keyword to look for blocks. That is, I have found that the easiest way to quickly organize like pages based on block references. Before I go into the demo, I don't know if there are any questions or people want to speak up. Yeah, Ethan, I will show in a bit how I do the double parentheses to search Rome. It's basically when I'm building outlines that I use it, and instead of dragging blocks and then turning them into block references, I just directly search, but I will show in a bit how I do this. So this is my Rome, this is my personal Rome, and I will show a very simple process for collecting stuff for my newsletter, organizing it, distilling it, and then what do I do to express what I've collected, organized, and distilled, and how do I reuse things. So the first step is when I write the newsletter, I have a few sections that I always talk about. So it's stuff I created myself or community members, and then there's a section resources by the Roam community, which are like 4 or 5 links, resources that I think are useful, like plugins, articles, how-tos, whatever. But I need to go out to find those, to collect those. It's not something that comes from my mind that I think, oh, I'm going to write how I do my morning pages in Roam. No, I need to find something that someone else creates. So I do this during the week when I have a little bit of the downtime, and I try to remove as much friction as possible. So once I encounter something, I just fire off a simple template. So I even have an abbreviation here at the end. So I can type semicolon, semicolon, NS. We'll make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to read. And I just hit enter. And this already organizes stuff for me because I have 2 links here, #resource, which turns into a link, and then for Roamstack/newsletter. And what I do here is a title of the resource. So this acts like a thumbnail. And then here it's who created it. Like often Twitter handle. And then here I do the link to the resource. That's it. That's basically it. So now I've captured something and I've already organized it. And why I do it this way is because, and I will give a sneak peek of the distillation phase, but I have a query setup which I treat as an inbox. So I have a page, area/Roamstack, for those who have done building a second brain that will be familiar. And this is like an index page. So this page in itself is already a distillation. It's a map of content and anything that's related to Roamstack that I am currently actively working on. So I have a very short index with running stuff. And I will show in a bit what the newsletter page looks like, because that in itself is also an index. And then I have my newsletter resources, which is an inbox. So here I have already, for now, I have 9 resources collected. So I've already basically the first 3 steps are done for me because I leverage a template and I use a query. And then the final step for me is to pick like 4 or 5 resources and put them in my newsletter, and then riff off whatever I wrote before. So this is a very simple process. I'm going to stop here and continue with the slides to dive a little bit deeper into the distill process. I don't know if there are questions or comments. Let's see. So Bob, how do you handle capture overload? Define capture overload. So for who is it overload? Is it as you're capturing it that you're thinking, ooh, this is taking too long? Or is it more like, okay, now I've captured this. How do I filter out the noise? So I'll wait for Bob to think about an answer. Lindsay, are there any articles on setting up a similar area page? I have no structure to that page. It's a growing thing. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you go to my Twitter page, I wrote a thread today and I linked to the Paris system. So if you're not familiar with building a second brain, basically area is just a designation within the Paris system, and Paris stands for projects, areas, resources, archives. And it's just a way to organize your, I would say, your digital assets. So if you have documents, you have a main folder called projects where you store all your current project documents. You have areas, stuff that doesn't really have an end date, but keeps coming back. For example, in my case, Roamstack is an area, but taxes, like I have a business. I need to do tax returns every quarter. So that is an area for me. And then resources are, and archives are basically everything else in my case. And what's the table of contents part my idea? No, it's the idea of an index. If you want to dive really deep into this idea of creating indexes, I recommend Nick Milo. So Nick Milo, he is known for his Obsidian content. I'm still planning to distill some of his insights for the Rome stack knowledge base. It's on my to-do list, but too much to create. But Nick Milo, he has some interesting stuff about creating maps of content. And in his case, he uses Obsidian, and I believe it's more necessary to create maps of content or indexes with or for Obsidian than it is for Rome, because in Rome we have the linked and unlinked references. So, and I see people say Obsidian is looking very tempting these days. I disagree. It's a different paradigm. So just like you cannot compare Evernote and Rome, you cannot compare Obsidian and Rome, because Rome is an outliner and Obsidian isn't. So you can say, well, yeah, but it has similar features, sure. But we're talking about systems here. I'm not really talking about features. So it's a collection of features that together create the system and that enable you to do stuff. In my case, the work that I do, the atomicity of notes. So I like to create atomic notes. The block structure, the bullet structure works perfect for that. If you have longer notes where you need different paragraphs and you want to write more long form, probably Obsidian is good for you. So different use cases, different tools again. Anyway, let's go into the distill phase, because this is mostly tool agnostic, although I will show in a bit how I do this in Rome using block references. Tiago teaches the main way to distill notes is by highlighting your highlights. So what his process is, he mostly consumes text and he creates highlights. He sends them to Readwise, and then Readwise sends those highlights and his notes to his Evernote. He uses Evernote. And then he goes through the highlights that he took and he bolts the most important parts. So like the main ideas become salient. They jump out to you. When you're skimming the page and you have bolded different parts of paragraphs, that will stand out. And the way I use it is basically as you see it here in the slides. This is progressive summarization. I bold the most important parts. So it's nothing more than that. He adds several steps to it. So next to bolding, you also have highlighting. So of the bolded parts, to really drill down to the essence of that highlight, you highlight the bolded parts, and then from there he starts to write evergreen notes. So he doesn't write his own notes, and I'm speaking of Tiago, until he has done several passes. So first collect the highlight, then bold the highlight, and highlight the parts of the bolded parts. And then as he goes through his notes, he writes down his own thoughts. And then the last step is basically remixing it into evergreen notes. And Zettelkasten is one way you can do that. So how to distill in Rome? Just use the markdown, bold, or highlight. Create maps of content, so create indexes. Or I think I have a page, I haven't used it in a while, which is called index, with stuff I like to go through. This actually, I created this index using a plugin, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it. But like, this grows. There's no structure to this system. It's only like a jump off points to quickly find specific pages. All right, and then create outlines with block references. So I will show you how I actually prepared for this session. And there are two ways that I do that. So here I have my task for today, prepare a salon. And this is how I normally start out. So I think of keywords, I think of pages I want to check out, and where I want to pull blocks from to create an outline. So if we look underneath the code framework, these are just ideas or blocks I collected in preparation to this. So what I did, I just opened the references to this page, so to the code framework in the sidebar. If it's going to open, because my computer like slowed down at this point in Zoom calls. Right, a little bit smaller. So here I have the references to the term code framework, different articles, like this article I read. As you can see here, this is a highlight, but a note I took myself. Sometimes I take notes from my own articles, like my previous articles. And this is a video that like I watched, was an interview with Tiago. I think I took these notes before I did Building a Second Brain. And actually, as I was preparing the session, this letter, like this one, this highlight, I found it just by typing parentheses, parentheses, which starts a block search. So you have bracket, bracket, which starts a page search, parentheses, parentheses, double parentheses starts a block search. So I can write code framework. And then I just read through these blocks. And then, I think, oh, this is interesting. Hit enter. And there it is. So often I start out just by naming a few pages that I want to check out. I just drag over blocks as block references. So in my case, I'm a Mac, I hold the Option key. And then as I run out of pages or places to check out and I haven't found enough yet, I will turn to the block search. Sometimes I immediately start out with block search, but I prefer to direct my attention a little bit and to create a little bit more structure. So if I would directly call in the block reference search or the block search, I would miss out on an opportunity to maybe add some links. So I like to open the pages, read through the notes, maybe progressively summarize a little bit more. So bold some of the highlights of my own notes, add some links, maybe expand a little on my note, and then drag over that block. So that is the basic process to distill. And this is also very much in line with How to Take Smart Notes. So the book How to Take Smart Notes, where Sönke Ahrens talks about bottom-up approach. So instead of thinking of a topic and thinking of the point you want to make and then look for supporting evidence, he says you first go through your notes, and again, you basically collect what resonates with you before you turn it into an outline. You give it some more structure. So that is a bottom-up approach. And doing this, we talk about distillation. Doing this, and by the way, I hope my screen was visible the whole time. Was it visible? Okay, perfect. Because I just got a message that now people can see your screen. It's like, oh. And finding like highlights like this sometimes inspires me to start riffing off them. So this is the Zettelkasten approach. I have a very simple template for Zettelkasten. I stole it from Bo Han. What I do here is I just copy paste the notes. I tell where I got it from, and I riff off the notes. So in this case, I have notes. As you can see here, I've already started organizing it a little bit. So I've already added the link personal leverage. So I've already organized it a little bit, make it easier to discover. I think the other one I've also progressively summarized. No, I have it. But again, here I've created a link. And then what I do, I take this highlight and I just riff off it. So I just write whatever pops up in my mind. So that is basically distilling what I think about a highlight. So this is one way you can distill your notes, often triggered by something you read. But as you can see here, this is also, again, a collection and organization approach. Because when I read something interesting, I go to my inbox page. That is my process. I hit semicolon, semicolon, enter, because the first option is the Zettelkasten, and I can start typing right away. So this in itself is already a collection and organization process, so to say. It doesn't have to be big, can be very small. And if we then go to permanent notes, we can see further distillation and organization. And this is basically how it's a budding system this way. But these are basically statements, and behind every statement is a fleshed out literature note with leading notes. And as you can see here, I like to go deep. So I write a lot. And these leading notes are just my own thoughts. And the cool thing is, as I create outlines using the block search, so again, double parentheses, it will also find stuff like this. So whatever I write will be useful in the future. And I think also, Bob, your question about information overload, look how much crap I put in this. Like, it's there, but it's not in the way. It's just me having a conversation with myself. And if, like, as I'm roaming my database, I find something that catches my eye of my own notes, I just use it. So it's not in the way. I think if you create a few entry points, like with indexes, and for example, in this case, let's see what I just shown with the personal leverage loop. Oh, you can already have entry points to your notes. So I found in Rome, I don't have this problem of information overload. Maybe I will never look at a note. That's possible, but I wouldn't be any wiser of missing out. Let's see, some questions. Nick, let's see. Oh, many questions. Let's see, page. Oh, it's a corresponding button on Windows for a block reference. I think it depends on your keyboard settings. I think it's either Control or Alt. Maybe someone else can say. Can you share the template? So I think you mean the Zettelkasten template. Let's share it in the chat. You might need to clean it up a little bit. By the way, something I've added, it's a very simple template, but something I've added is this little more, I don't know, what's it called, like arrow sign, whatever. Because this way I indicate, as you can see here, no, what am I doing? As you can see here, it will turn it into a block quote, which for me indicates those are not my own words. Because I put brackets around it, I can search for highlights. So instead of like hashtag highlights, I can just go to this page. I'm not going to do it now because I will have thousands of these references. My computer will hate me. But basically, this is just a way to indicate, okay, these are not my own words. I like to do that. It makes it easier when I block references something. But yeah, I'm going to share this template in the chat. you might need to clean it up a bit. All right. Some more questions. How does a daily/weekly habit to implement this look like? Depends. I mean, I like to work with recurring tasks on my weekly template. So if I go to my weekly template, I have some recurring tasks. So in my case, it's sync readwise, process monitor, check feedback. You could do like plan permanent writing time. I don't know, something like that. Just something to remind yourself to plan it. And then what I also use, for example, in the case of journaling, I use this button, for example. So this is a smart block. And this is basically a prompt. So when I click this, it will fire off this template. It's a little bit slow because it's not the native template functionality. And I can easily add something new. So you could create something like this for a Zettelkasten. So you could create a Zettelkasten button and put the template in it. If you check the, I think if it's not there yet. I'm working on a Roam Stack blog article. So just subscribe to the Roam Stack newsletter. You'll get you'll get an article where I explain how I actually built this with the button and everything. And I found this works well to cultivate the habit, just having it on your daily notes page and a button to easily trigger it. Gabriel, ooh, getting into a philosophical question. How is a fleeting note different from a literature note? Fleeting note is just your thoughts. Everything is fair game. It doesn't have to be about the highlight. Like if you read some of my fleeting note entries, like I have one permanent note about the importance of writing. And I'm just thinking back in the fleeting notes about this time that I remember when I was driving with my mom. I was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, and I saw like text, and I wanted to read it because I found it so fascinating. And that's why when I discovered my love for letters and words and reading. So I went really down into that idea of why writing is so important for me. But then I went to the literature notes. It's basically, the literature notes are basically just a summary of the highlight in my own words. So no divergence of oh, this is what it reminds me of, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just, you have the highlight. So if you look at it from, I don't know if people are familiar with it, but convergent and divergent thinking. So the fleeting notes are basically divergent thinking. So you're thinking really wide. And then as you've really wrangled out that whole highlight that triggered those ideas in you, you converge again. You bring back the focus to what you were thinking about, and then just distill the essence of the highlight, but in your own words, and how it applies to your own context. But most of the context is explained in the fleeting notes. And then add does the more than sign, the arrow sign, allow you to collect quotes in one page? Yes. So again, I'm not going to do it now, but you can type in this, and this is a page. If you go to this page, looked in the linked references, those are quotes because I've indicated them as a block quote. Ooh, let's see. Ethan, very long comment. I'm going to read it out loud. So Ram says, I suppose to your point, the value isn't in always knowing everything that you've always captured. Exactly. It's fine to capture everything that you can, as long as it only shows up when you're looking for it. Correct. Yes. And then Ethan continues, I like your comment about things staying out of the way instead of looking at a static collected data and trying to pick out the pieces that might be interesting. You decide what you want the entry point, the conversation to be, and then sort and sift your way through information as it comes into connection with your current location. Am I following that correctly? Yes, I take the name Rome super serious. I jump from note to note. I jump from link to link. I use search, as you've seen, with the double parentheses, but that like search isn't at the core. It's I might find one interesting block, and I see, oh, that block is part of a page, maybe notes from a course or an article, whatever. Then I'm going to that page and I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. And then I'm going to connect as I go along. So indeed, with my current context, with my current understanding of things, with my current needs in mind, I am going into my knowledge base, my Roam graph. And like my needs will always change, my context will always change, but that's what makes my Roam graph a living thing. And the beauty for me is that it doesn't cause overwhelm if it's filled to the brim with notes you never revisit. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it because it's a waste of time, but the system can handle it. So let's dive into Express. I don't know how we're doing with time. Oh, coming up on time. So Express, the key point I want to make is when you create content, it's not just for others. Keep your future self in mind. So when you write something, you need to try to strike a balance between concise, so it's easy to scan your notes. You can write summaries, you can bold the most important parts. That's all stuff to make your notes glanceable. But then also make sure that you include enough context so that you can understand the note on itself. So aim for evergreen notes. What are evergreen notes? Like they have no expiry date. So for example, if you have a project has an end date. Notes related to a project are only relevant to that scope of the project. Like lessons learned can be evergreen notes. When you finish a project and you write lessons learned, those could be evergreen notes. But like a note that you need to act on before a specific date, those are more fleeting notes. They are temporarily useful. I wouldn't like. You need some organization to be able to retrieve them or see them at the right moment, but like it doesn't need to go through the distillation phase or the express phase if it's just for the sake of it. But if you have knowledge, if you want to build on your knowledge, if you find something that resonates with you, and you think, oh, I want to dig deeper into this idea, taking it all the way through to the express stage, that will really deepen your understanding of a domain. But like your attention, your time is limited, so you cannot do this for everything. The way I do it, I use it as a forcing function. I have a blog, I have a newsletter. When Asail had a corporate job, I also wrote a newsletter, but for our team, and I had a similar process. And like the process I use now, like with everything, writing and everything, I produce a 1,000 word newsletter every week, and it takes me about an hour. Before, without the collect phase and everything, I would go out on Friday and or maybe Thursday and try to look for interesting resources. Then it would take me like 4 or 5, sometimes 6 hours. So having these systems, but having these systems by doing things repeatedly and then distilling what are the concrete steps, that really can take away a lot of friction. And as you saw, it's not very complex. I have a template to capture and organize stuff. And then to make distillation easier, I have a query set up. So even when we talk about a framework, it may feel like it's a lot. These are just a few steps. And it's just a perspective shift I want you to see, that things don't have to be difficult. You can start with a system you adopt wholesale from someone, but then you really need to look at the individual steps. Is everything useful for you? Like the progressive summarization part, I skip it often because I already write my notes in such an atomic way that I don't really need it. It's just a single line. So maybe I might bold a word here and there. I'm not bolding entire phrases. So that is my approach. So I've shown basically the whole process. Again, Zettelkasten, I see it as one way to express. And I realize I haven't really shown the last part. So let's say it's now Friday and it's time to write the newsletter. So I open up this query in the sidebar. So I have it close by. And again, my computer is hating me now. I go to the newsletter page, which in itself is an index. So I write everything in Rome. And then I already have a few things set up. Again, I just do this as the opportunity arises. But let's say it's Friday now. I do have a template and I just run it. So publication date, select that. So that's this Friday. And then I just have some basic stuff set up. These are empty, but I already have like the structure set up. So let's say now the distillation phase, and I notice my computer is really getting slow. So what I would do now is I would simply drag this one from here. So this resource, I drag it now from the daily notes page. I don't know if it's working. Ooh. Well, that's working nicely. By the way, this is my computer. This isn't Rome. It isn't Rome, that's so slow. But I just bring it over and then I delete the metadata and I just start typing. So that is a distillation phase, and then I take it right away from distillation to expression. So I just write a little blurb about the link, promote it a little bit, and that's it. This is the basic process. So expressing in and out of Rome, like I've shown, have recurring tasks, do use like site builders like Rome Garden if you want to publish directly from Rome. If you want to export, you can use Rome 42 because it has a convert function, or Rome tools if you don't want to use plugins. I don't use any of these. I just copy and paste blocks from Rome into ConvertKit. Will it have the bullets in front of them? Yes, but I have a backspace key. So, I mean, it's easier to just delete the bullet than to use all these different tools and then still have to clean up the markup. So recap, the code framework, the processes collect is to collect ideas and information that resonate with you. Organize is to add structures and link to easily retrieve notes. So it's not organization for the sake of organization. The goal is retrieval. So actually you need to have a process or a reason to retrieve your notes. If you don't have a reason to retrieve your notes, find one. Start a blog, start a newsletter. Start using your notes that you take in your work. Like what I started to do at some point was to just send a recap after a meeting to my teammates. So I came to be known as the note-taking guy in my team. It was fine. I landed me some cool projects, but it also helped me to have a actually use case to take notes and then retrieve them. Distill your insights based on several perspectives. You can use different systems, and then express. That's the product of your thinking. Can be used as input for others. Like as knowledge workers, we use the input from others because as we consume information, those are the outputs from others, and what we output is used as input by others. So that is basically the cycle of knowledge work, but also take care of your future self. And whew, there was a lot. So want to learn more? Go to romestack.com. Sign up for the newsletter. It's free, no spam, no bullshit. just one newsletter every Friday. If you want more of my renting, just follow my Twitter handle or RR out. And Roam Stack, it's basically a feed of stuff that I find interesting. Often it ends up in the Roam Stack newsletter at some point, but this is like a live feed of stuff that I encounter. So 2 minutes left, but I will take a little bit more time. Let's see in the chat. I don't know if someone wants to speak up, wants to unmute yourself, just raise your hand. I mean, using the raise hand feature. And I'm going to have a look at the chat. What plugin did you use for that index page you showed that listed all of your books? It's a smart block. And it's called namespace. What's it called? Let me check. Space. Yeah. And I mean, isn't this beautiful? I just looked for namespace, and here it looked for blocks. So here, smart block to create indexes. So let's see. So this was in a newsletter, and I know then it should be here. Yeah, list pages in a namespace. Let me grab this link. But where is the chat now? I'll stop sharing. So that's the namespace plugin. All right, other questions? What? Let's see. I've never done query. Sounds like this is something I need to learn. It's very simple, very easy. Again, go to Roam Stack, click the knowledge base, search for queries, and there's a help article, public help article about it. Could you share all the templates you mentioned in the workshop? I mean, apart from the Zettelkasten, it's just the, I don't know what else. Like if you look at the blog, the Roam Stack blog, I have my weekly planning template. And the other ones, they're very specific to the newsletter. So I don't see how they could be useful. Gabriel Ramses, any good resources on learning more how to be more atomic with note taking, especially on the atomic acidity part of the distillation process. And then I see Vincent has linked to Andy Matushak. I think that is a really good starting point. So he basically writes atomic notes about atomic notes, which is very useful. What else? Atomic notes. Yeah, I would say how to take smart notes. So the book, How to Take Smart Notes. Ethan, someone needs an M1. I'm saving up for it, man. Saving up for it. And then Nick, can I toss him a recommendation for joining your members area? Yes, thank you, Nick. So I should probably pitch it. Roam Stack, it's a membership community, Discord channel, sessions like this, screencasts, everything. So everything you basically need to learn Roam. If you don't want to do a course, if you think I'm just interested in queries and I want to learn queries and I want to have like 3 articles and 2 videos that teach me queries in half an hour, you will find it in the knowledge base. So it's not just me creating the content. My principle is I will give a platform to fellow Roam creators, link to useful stuff. In that sense, I'm more of a curator. That stuff is for free mostly. And then that, like the non-free stuff is things that I cannot scale. So giving my time, doing onboardings. So if you become a member, you'll have onboarding. I will basically, as a Roam therapist, I will listen to your struggles and point you in the right direction to get the most out of this tool without feeling overwhelmed, because there's so much possible with this. And like I started Roam Stack because I don't really believe in dumping a bunch of knowledge on your head when you don't need it. The whole reason I started with note taking is because I, like, in college, I was taking so many courses that weren't relevant for myself in that moment, because I was doing a teaching degree and I wasn't teaching yet. So I would write things down um, like plans or strategic plans almost. So my future self could benefit from it. Back then, I didn't have like a digital system. Everything was still on paper, but that's basically why I started with note taking. I want to save people the time and the struggle to figure everything out on their own, and make it easier just to do the stuff you want to get done. What else? Nothing else from my side. I don't know if people have questions, comments, want to bash the code framework. Maybe you think it's complete shit, but I would like to hear. And I would, and if you use it, I'm very curious. Maybe what you do differently, maybe some other steps that you use. All right. There are no more questions and we're already over time. So I just want to thank you all. Again, the recording will be available. I'm going to edit a little bit. So expect it next week, somewhere next week. What else? Sign up for the RoamStack newsletter. Just go to roamstack.com. Again, free newsletter, no spam, no special offers, etc. Just the newsletter. Want to hear more from me? Join RoamStack. That's a simple answer. Follow me on Twitter. If you want to connect with people, I will keep the session a little bit longer open, so you can dump your links in below in the chat. And I want to thank you all.